This is the Music History In-Depth podcast for February 12th through the 18th. On this week's show, a member of a Rock and Roll Hall of Fame duo gets sentenced, a popular singing group releases its debut album, plus we rapid fire through some events for the week, including 3 albums, 3 birthdays, a film, and a national anthem. This show goes more in depth about some of the events that we put on our daily podcast, the Music History Today podcast, which drops every single day, including weekends, wherever you get your podcast from. Now, on to this week's episode. Ike Turner was born on November 5th, 1931 in Clarksdale, Mississippi. He started playing guitar as a kid and formed his group the Kings of Rhythm during that time. He recorded the song Rocket 88 in March of 1951. Rocket 88 is considered by some to be the first recorded rock and roll song, although others dispute that. Ike also worked as a talent scout and producer for Sun Records in Memphis, Tennessee, helping to find artists such as B.B. King, Bobby Blue Bland, and Howlin' Wolf. In 1954, Ike moved his operations to St. Louis, Missouri, and in 1956, Anna Mae Bullock was just a nursing assistant going to the clubs at night in St. Louis. But one night, she watched the band, the Kings of Rhythm, at a bar that Anna's sister worked at. Anna loved what she heard, so much so that she started dating the saxophonist, which worked out okay because the sister was dating the band's drummer. Go figure. The band, of course, was led by Ike Turner, and one night during an intermission, someone in the band decided to let Anna sing along. Her voice impressed the band so much that she sang some songs with the band during that next show and then ended up becoming a backup singer. In 1960, the band had studio time booked and were supposed to record with Art Lassiter. Lassiter didn't show up, so they let Anna sing the song. After all, they had the studio booked, and studio time was expensive, even back then. Anna's song was so good that the band was convinced to send it to a local radio station. The band was also convinced to change directions. Ike Turner decided to change the name of the backup singers to the Ikeettes, and he also promoted Anna to lead singer and gave her a stage name, Tina Turner. Ike ended up marrying Tina in 1962, which became his 7th out of 14 marriages. He and Tina also had an extremely tumultuous relationship, to put it nicely. See the movie What's Love Got to Do With It, starring Angela Bassett and Lawrence Fishburne, if you really want to know the details. They ended up divorcing in 1977. Both of their solo careers would languish for a time, and at one point, with Tina becoming a single mother trying to feed her kids, with very little money coming in at that point, things were extremely tough for her. Things got so tough that she had to take a gig at the Sun City Resort in South Africa, which put her in violation of sanctions that were in place against the South African racist apartheid regime, which did not go over well with a whole lot of musicians at that point. Tina would finally get a solo hit single in 1983 when her remake of the Reverend Al Green song, Let's Stay Together, became the first single to be released from the Private Dancer album. Then she came storming back with the song What's Love Got to Do With It, which became an instant classic in 1984 along with 5 more top 10 hits and record-breaking tours. The nicknamed Queen of Rock and Roll was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame class of 2021 for her solo career. Ike, meanwhile, tried to continue on by forming the group the Ikeettes in various formations over the next 30 years or so. He also had his demons to go along with his temper, chief among them, drugs. In 1980, he was arrested during a SWAT raid on his recording studio and received 30 days in jail for having 7 grams of cocaine. In 1985, Ike was arrested and charged with conspiring to sell $16,000 worth of cocaine. No jail time was given. In 1986, he was arrested for cocaine possession again, and again, no jail time was given. In 1987, he was arrested for trying to sell cocaine to an undercover officer. He pled not guilty, and again, with no jail time. However, in May of 1989, Ike was arrested for driving under the influence of cocaine in West Hollywood, California. This time, he couldn't wiggle himself out of it. In January of 1990, he was convicted, and on February 16, 1990, Ike Turner was sent to prison, where he served 18 months of a 4-year prison sentence. He was in jail when he and Tina were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as the duo of Ike and Tina Turner. After prison, and while reforming the Ikeettes yet again and going out on tour, Ike continued his battle with drug addiction, although he managed to stay clean for 10 years until his demons came back again. And on December 10th, 2007, Ike told his assistant that he was dying and probably wouldn't live to see Christmas. Ike was right. 2 days later, on December 12th, 2007, Ike Turner passed away from a cocaine overdose. As Ike and Tina Turner, they released 70 singles and had hits like Proud Mary, It's Gonna Work Out Fine, A Fool in Love, I Idolize You, Poor Fool, I've Been Loving You Too Long, River Deep Mountain High, and Nutbush City Limits. They also released 26 studio albums and 12 live albums and were nominated for 7 Grammy Awards as a duo, winning 1 for Proud Mary in 1972. Proud Mary and River Deep Mountain High were inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame separately. The sentencing of Ike Turner to prison, finally, on drug charges, February 16th, 1990. Before we go any further, we'd like to tell you about our other podcasts. The Music History Today podcast goes over the daily events in music history and drops daily, including weekends, on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. There's also the Music Halls of Fame podcast, which talks about a member of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, along with other Music Halls of Fame's museums and walks of fame. The Music Halls of Fame podcast drops every Thursday and can also be found on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Now, back to this podcast. The group Destiny's Child originally started out with the name Girls Tyme, spelled T-Y-M-E, and in the beginning had a lot of members. They eventually went down to 6 members. They first appeared nationally on Ed McMahon's TV competition show, Star Search. For you young bucks out there, Star Search was a combination of So You Think You Can Dance, along with American Idol, X Factor, and America's Next Top Model, kind of all rolled into one. Each week, 2 contestants would compete against each other. Winner came back the next week, and the loser went home with the knowledge that they went to Hollywood and had their 15 minutes of fame. Okay, it was actually more like 5 minutes of fame back then, but whatever. Turns out, Girls Tyme lost because, as lead singer Beyonce Knowles tells it, they chose the wrong song. That's right, kids. Beyonce, the Queen Bee, lost a talent show contest, which should give hope to everybody out there who is actually going for it, and also don't listen to the critics. Beyonce's father, Matthew, decided to become the group's manager and to cut the group members down to 4: Beyonce, Kelly Rowland, Latavia Robertson, and LaToya Luckett. Matthew also helped to hone the group's skills with singing and dancing lessons, and eventually the group got signed to a recording contract, and that's when they changed their name from Girls Tyme with a Y instead of an I to Destiny's Child. Destiny's Child's debut album was originally going to be called Bridges, but was renamed after the group. It was recorded in 11 different studios in 7 different cities, including Atlanta, Georgia, Oakland, California, New York City, and the group's hometown of Houston, Texas, throughout 1997. They had 18 different producers, including famous names like Wyclef Jean from the Fugees, along with Jermaine Dupri. Their self-titled debut album was released on February 17, 1998 on Music World Records, which was Matthew Knowles' record label, through 550 Records, which operated through Sony's Epic Records. There were 13 songs on the original American release: Second Nature, No No No, Parts 1 and 2, With Me, Parts 1 and 2, Tell Me, Bridges, which was going to be the original name of the album, Show Me the Way, Killing Time, Illusion, Birthday, My Time Has Come, and a cover version of the Commodore smash hit single Sail On. The international release had a 14th song, Know That, while the Japanese release had a 15th song, The Spiritual Amazing Grace. A 2001 European release had the extra songs You're the Only One, a dubstep remix of Illusion called Dub Illusion, along with an extended remix of No No No. The first single from the song, Killing Time, was heard 8 months before the album was actually released, when it ended up on the soundtrack album for the 1997 movie Men in Black, starring Will Smith and Tommy Lee Jones. The first official release happened in October 1997 when they released both parts 1 and 2 of the song No No No. Both versions of the song did well, going top 10 and hitting number 1 on the Billboard R&B singles chart. With Me was the next single release, which went top 20 in Europe, but could not chart in America because it was only released to radio stations and wasn't for sale as a single to the general public. The last single release was Illusions, whose remixes did pretty well on the charts themselves. As for the chart action of the album, it entered the Billboard Albums chart at number 69 and only made it up 2 spots to number 67 in its 5th week before finally dropping off of the charts after 26 weeks. On Billboard's R&B chart, it got to number 14. Internationally, the album did a little better, but not much. It got as high as number 29. It also reached platinum status 2 years after it came out, although that was mainly due to the breakout success of their second album. Critically, Destiny's Child, the album, received average scores. Kelly Rowland called the album's debut a moderate success, but said that the neo-soul sound of the songs was way too mature for the group, who were very young at the time. In fact, Beyoncé was only 7 months away from turning 17 years old when the debut album was released, as her birthday is September 4th, 1981. Destiny's Child's second album, Writings on the Wall, in 1999, was the one that gave them superstardom. The hits on that album were Bills, 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 and Say My Name. The album sold 8 million copies in America, while the singles conquered the R&B and dance charts. And once that album became popular, band tensions, of course, started to show, as with most bands. 2 of the members, Latavia and LaToya, were let go from the group after they started complaining that Beyoncé and Kelly Rowland were getting favoritism in the group, which one would figure because they were there the longest. Those ladies ended up suing the group, and they finally reached a settlement. In the meantime, they were replaced by Michelle Williams and Farrah Franklin. Franklin lasted only 5 months before being let go, so that left Destiny's Child as Beyoncé, Kelly, and Michelle, otherwise known as the classic lineup. Overall, as the hit albums and singles kept coming, Destiny's Child would rack up one of the most impressive resumes for any group in the new century. They had 23 singles, 10 of which hit the top 10 in America. They also had 14 Grammy nominations, winning 3. They are now the biggest selling girl group in music history, after having sold over 60 million records worldwide, and are the 9th biggest selling artist for the first decade of this century, before they ended up breaking up on February 19th, 2006, after performing at the NBA All-Star Game. Beyoncé, of course, went on to international solo success and has become a household name. Kelly has had success on the dance charts with producer/DJ David Guetta, along with doing a duet with rapper Nelly. Michelle has had some success as well. Also, as Kelly promised during their All-Star Game appearance, which was their final appearance, their last album was their final album, but it was not their final appearance together, as the trio still performed together every few years or so, mainly doing surprise appearances at different Beyoncé performances like the Super Bowl halftime show. The biggest selling girl group in music history, Destiny's Child, released their debut self-titled album on February 17th, 1998. Finally, let's do some honorable mentions, and we're going to rapid fire through a bunch of them, starting off with albums. On February 17, 1976, an album 6 years in the making came out and became the biggest selling album of all time. This album has sold over 38 million records in America and 45 million records worldwide. During the 20th century, it actually sold more copies than Michael Jackson's album Thriller, although now Thriller owns the record for most album copies sold worldwide, regardless of century. The band did not want to release the album. However, their record company had other ideas, as their new album at that time wasn't actually ready for release yet. That delayed album that they were working on still, by the way, Hotel California, which became a huge album in its own right. This particular album was their 9-song greatest hits album that was culled together from their first 4 albums starting in 1971. The release of the Eagles' greatest hits 1971 to 1975, the biggest selling album of the 20th century in America, the biggest selling album of all time in America, released February 17th, 1976. On February 13th, 2 debut albums came out. On February 13th, 1967, this country artist put out her debut album. Afterwards, country music and television star Porter Wagner invited her to join his show, and her career skyrocketed. She started out doing country music and then transferred over to pop country music, you might say, along with becoming an actress and doing movies. She sang the original version of Whitney Houston's mega smash, I Will Always Love You. Her hits include Jolene, 9 to 5, Islands in the Stream, and Coat of Many Colors. She also owns a theme park and, of course, is Miley Cyrus's godmother. The theme park, Dollywood. The artist, Miss Dolly Parton, whose debut album was released on February 13th, 1967, simply titled, Hello, I'm Dolly. This group recorded their entire debut album in a single day, October 16th, 1969. On Friday the 13th, February 13th, 1970, they released it and changed music forever by introducing a new genre of music called heavy metal. The band actually did the unthinkable when promoting their debut album by not promoting their debut album. They actually let word of mouth do the promoting for them. It worked. The album quickly sold once word of mouth started getting around, and the album and the band were the same name. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees Black Sabbath, who released their album Black Sabbath on February 13th, Friday the 13th, 1970. There is an honorable mention concerning a single this week. On February 13th, 1993, RuPaul's song Supermodel entered the Billboard singles chart for the very first time. You would think that as popular and well-known that song is even to this day, it was a huge smash. It wasn't. It didn't even crack the top 40. In fact, it peaked at number 45 before cratering out of the top 100. So, it just goes to show you that you never know which songs will become extremely popular throughout time and live on in longevity. And also it shows that chart popularity sometimes really has absolutely nothing to do with it. So, happy birthday to RuPaul's song Supermodel, when it crashed the Billboard charts for the very first time on February 13th, 1993. Now, on to the birthdays, all of which happened on February 18th. First off, this man was born in 1965. He and his friends formed a hip-hop group that told the stories about life on the streets of L.A. Once that group broke up, he found huge solo success and also produced 3 people who became 3 of the most important hip-hop artists / entrepreneurs of all time as well. He's also either a billionaire or about to be due to his many investments. One of the members of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame inductees, NWA, who is also a mentor to both Snoop Dogg, Eminem, and 50 Cent, along with at one time and still possibly a co-owner of Beats by Dr. Dre, the aforementioned Dr. Dre, born February 18th, 1965. This next person first achieved superstardom on television on the hit 1970s comedy Welcome Back, Kotter. He then achieved movie stardom, dancing in the movie Saturday Night Fever, singing and dancing in the movie Grease, and dancing in the movie Urban Cowboy. All 3 of those movies having killer soundtracks that were huge sellers. In the 1980s, his career cooled off so much that he became the butt of jokes. But then, director and writer Quentin Tarantino put him in the 1994 movie Pulp Fiction, which rejuvenated his career, along with bringing Samuel L. Jackson to the movie public's attention. He is singer and actor John Travolta, born February 18th, 1954. This next artist is actually a modern art artist, along with being a singer. She met her soon-to-be husband at an art gallery. She has also been blamed for the breakup of her soon-to-be husband's little group, her name becoming synonymous with an artist girlfriend who breaks up a band. For the record, though, her boyfriend's band had problems long before she came on the scene and were already going off in different directions, and they were going to break up anyway by the time she got there. That band, by the way, if you haven't figured it out by now, the Beatles. The boyfriend who became the husband, John Lennon. The artist, singer, and social activist, Yoko Ono, born February 18th, 1933. These next 2 mentions are completely unrelated to each other. First, let us talk about a film. On February 14th, Valentine's Day, 1992, a film was released that actually started out as a sketch on Saturday Night Live. This movie about 2 headbanging kids from Milwaukee, Wisconsin became a huge hit. The soundtrack also became a huge hit and brought Queen's Bohemian Rhapsody back to the forefront. By the way, did you know that Milwaukee is Algonquin for the good land? I did not know that. Alice Cooper taught me that when he appeared in this movie. Party on, Wayne. Party on, Garth. Wayne's World, released Valentine's Day, February 14th, 1992. And finally, on February 13th, 1983, the NBA All-Star Game took place in Los Angeles, California. Not much is actually remembered about the game unless you're a longtime fan of basketball like I am. To the non-fan, though, you probably remember this game because of the national anthem. In what is arguably one of the best renditions of the national anthem ever sung, singer Marvin Gaye walked to center court and performed a smooth anthem with a sultry R&B beat. The performance was so popular that it actually gave Marvin's career a much-needed boost at the time. Artists ever since have been putting their own spin on the anthem, some to great praise, like Whitney Houston at the Super Bowl, and then there's some to great condemnation, like Roseanne Barr at a baseball game. Google that one, kids. It's really, really scary. Marvin Gaye performing an R&B version of the national anthem at the NBA All-Star Game on February 13th, 1983. And that is it for the Music History In-Depth podcast for February 12th through the 18th. Thanks for listening.